So you'll see that. And at the end of this, there'll be an opportunity, and indeed at the start of this, to check scan a QR code so that you can register that you came to the session, you'll get the slides and you'll get the recording. So you don't need to worry too much about taking notes. And in fact, that is the first thing I'm going to ask you all to do. If you could all scan that QR code for me, please, then I'll be able to register your attendance. And like I say, you'll get the slides, you'll also get the recording. If for whatever reason you can't scan that QR code, maybe you've joined on your phone or whatever it might be, there will be an email at the end of this session that I'll flash up on the screen. You can email that and then you'll be sent the recording and the slides. So don't worry too much if you absolutely can't do that, but please do this in the first instance. I'll just give you a minute to scan that and get it all sorted. And then we will make a start. So thank you very much for coming, everybody. My name is Adam. I am one of the careers consultants as part of the careers team. This session is probably going to take anywhere between 30 minutes to 40 minutes, something like that. We're going to be looking at part-time jobs. Essentially, what kind of job you should be aiming for, how to get them, the kind of steps that you need to go through to get yourself a part-time job. We do have some other sessions that are specific to things like how to actually look for a job, where we go into that in a lot more detail. I'll be introducing you to things like that, but it won't necessarily cover absolutely everything in this session. But if it is something that you want to do maybe a bit of a deep dive on, we do have those sessions available, and they are all on our YouTube channel. So all of the sessions that I run are on there, so you can access those whenever is convenient for you guys. Okay, so let's start with maybe an obvious question, right? Why would you want a part-time job? And there's all sorts of reasons on there, some, fairly obvious. The biggest one for a lot of students, reduce your debts, basically money, right? You want some money while you're studying, and that can be really helpful for a multitude of reasons. It can build your CV, give you skills. The biggest thing for me for a part-time job, and the way I phrase it, is that it gives you ammunition, in a sense. When you are applying for jobs, when you are going through interviews, you need things to be able to talk about. Experience, skills, knowledge, all that sort of stuff. Now, the big thing that I always say is, look, everything you have done, whatever it is, whether it's work experience, extracurricular, hobbies, all of it is relevant. But part-time work is one of the easy ways to talk about different things, okay? So it's really useful from that perspective. Now, there are all sorts of jobs that you could get on a part-time basis while you're studying. And I've put a lot of some of the obvious ones on the screen. So things like hospitality, so restaurants, bars, retail's an obvious one, customer service, maybe tutoring, maybe market research. This is just to demonstrate that if you can get something that is directly related to your degree, then great. But that's not always going to be possible. If it isn't possible, and if you get something that's completely unrelated, but it's still, a decent part-time job, don't worry too much. It can be directly related to degree, but it doesn't have to be. And if it isn't, then it can still be really valuable. The reason is of what we call transferable skills. So when you are applying for different jobs, especially when it comes to graduate roles, they will be expecting you to demonstrate and articulate the skills that you've got. You do that through strong examples, and we talk about that specifically in my application and interview sessions. Those examples can come from anywhere. Work experience is great, and relevant work experience all the more, but extracurricular stuff, like I said, hobbies, interests, all of that stuff is valid as well, as long as it demonstrates that skill. Now, part-time work is really valuable for this. And even if it isn't directly relevant to your degree, it can still give you specific skills that can be really helpful. and that you can then talk about at interview. So like I say, when you're looking for part-time work, don't worry too much about it being directly relevant. If it can be, fantastic. If it isn't, not the end of the world. And then I've put the minimum wage rates up there just for your own information. Like it says on there, you're probably looking, depending on your age, between £8.60 to £11.41. But a lot of jobs, a lot of part-time roles are going to pay more than that. Now, if it's paying less, you really need to be concerned because that's not legal. But this is what you should be more or less aiming for. Okay. Now, like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat as I'm talking, and I'll be sort of taking a pause at various points. If anyone does have any questions now, please put that in, but I'll move on to the next slide. Little just thing before I get started properly about spotting scam jobs. Now, jobs that maybe are disreputable, one of the ones I've seen relatively often, and not often at all, but the ones that you do see occasionally, are things like where it will describe that you have to have a bank account for part of this role, or free ads on websites like Gumtree. The thing I would say, before you apply to something, do a little bit of research on the company. Do they have a website, right? Do they have a LinkedIn presence or a presence on things like social media? If all you are seeing is job adverts, then you need to be a little bit wary, because that suggests it's a bit weird. Okay, so just be aware of that. If you need some advice on spotting these sorts of jobs, the website page that we have dedicated to it is on there, and come and have a chat with us. And like I say, I'll put our contact details up at the end of this. So we have had a question. Are we supposed to pay tax when we do part-time jobs? So yes, you pay tax on any kind of work that you do, but you've got to be aware that in the UK there is what's called a tax-free allowance. So the first, I think it's £12,570 you earn in any given tax year is tax-free. Anything over that, then you start paying tax on that amount over that initial tax-free allowance. But yes, broadly speaking, you'll be needing to pay things like national insurance contributions, etc. You will pay tax on part-time work while you're studying. Okay, next one. Now, in terms of finding these jobs, I'm going to go through lots of different resources. Obviously, as the Careers Service on our website, we have quite a lot of information, quite a lot of resources and useful job websites that we put on our website. So that needs to be your first port of call. But I'll be talking in a little bit of detail about some of the ways that you might find a job. Okay, so we have had another question. As I'm an international student on a student visa, I was applying for a job as a tutor, but the application asked whether I have permission to be self-employed or not, and not having the permission would mean I cannot apply. How do you proceed with that? If it requires self-employment as an international student, you simply can't do it. From my understanding, you cannot be self-employed as an international student in the UK. Now, I would get that checked, because I am not an expert in immigration, anything like that. What I would suggest, we have a partnership with Latitude Law. If you go onto our website, we have a section devoted to international students, and you'll find Latitude Law's contact details there. I'd suggest getting in touch with them, and they'll be able to point you in the right sort of direction in terms of that. But from my understanding, if it needs you to be self-employed, first of all, that's not really a job. That's bordering on the sort of scam job thing. It's not actual employment they're offering you, and you're probably not able to do it as an international student. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So, broadly speaking, in the UK, we have lots of different job websites and resources to have a look at. Now, I put some on the screen there, things like Total Jobs, Reed. They all basically do the same thing, right? They are what we would call just job boards, generally speaking. We've had a question about Stint, whether that's a reliable app to find a part-time job. I've never heard of that before. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not reliable. Just have a look at the jobs on there and see, treat them with the same wearing as you treat anything, do a little bit of research on the actual jobs it's suggesting to you. Are those actual companies? Like I said, never heard of the app before, doesn't necessarily mean it's not viable. There are new things like this all the time. Now, these work more or less the same, which is why I generally focus on one called Indeed. Now, for anyone who doesn't know Indeed or hasn't heard of it before, that is, broadly speaking, the biggest job board, job website in the UK, right? Now, all of these job boards, they act like search engines. So they act in the same way that any search engine would. Now, I don't know if anyone has tried looking for part-time jobs or any sorts of jobs before, but using some of these can be a bit of a... It can be a bit challenging because you'll put something like part-time into the search bar and you'll get lots of results, most of which aren't really that useful. And the reason is it's behaving like a search engine. If you put part-time in, just as an example, it will look for every entry with the word part in, every entry with the word time in, and throw those up on the screen. Okay? That is why you are getting tons of results that aren't really helpful. So, what I'm going to suggest to you, and this is maybe your first bit of homework, is don't do what everybody does. Don't just put that simple term in. I want you, when you look for part-time jobs, to use what we call a Boolean string. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what a Boolean string is, hasn't heard that term before, it is essentially a way to manipulate any kind of search engine to give you exactly what you are looking for, rather than just putting out what it thinks you're looking for. So, if we take the example here, so if I give you that example, marketing and then and in capital letters and then the word assistant, there's two things there. Marketing and then assistant, they are what we call search terms. That is what you're searching for. The word and, because it is in capital letters, acts as an instruction. So you are telling the search engine what to do. And what that does is look for everything with that combination in it. So it's immediately a bit more specific. If, on the other hand, I then use speech marks, like I've done with part-time marketing assistant, that looks for that exact phrase and nothing else. So it's immediately a lot more focused. So for you, if you're just looking a bit more generally, but you want everything as part-time, you could put part-time in speech marks and it will look for everything with that specific phrase in. So it's a little bit more powerful. And what you can then do is combine the two. So there I've put part-time and then and, which is again an instruction, and then marketing or communications, because I know I'm looking for those sorts of roles. And you can experiment with these search terms and get a bit more of a sense of, I'm looking for something quite broad, but it has to be part-time. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, it takes a bit of experimentation, but to show you how powerful simple things like this can be, so on the right-hand side, I've done what basically everybody does. I've put marketing in, and there, 610 jobs, most of which not that helpful, okay? So when I scroll through this, I'm filtering out most, and that can take a long time. On the left-hand side, all I've done is something fairly basic, marketing and graduate, 19 jobs, they're all relevant to a graduate with a marketing degree. Now, like I said, this is going to take a little bit of experimentation. You are going to get these slides, so don't worry about taking notes, but what I'd suggest, play around with something like Indeed, look at the search terms, look at what's coming up, try and tweak your search to depend on, where you're at, what you're trying to look for. Then, once you've got the sort of relevant search, when you are finding that you're getting a lot of results that are directly relevant to what you're looking for, enter your email address in that bit in the right-hand side. You can automate this part of your job search by creating an alert. Now, we have had a question. I just wasn't getting to it so as not to interrupt the flow. Where can we find a template for our part-time CVs? All of our templates are on our website. So that's where you need to go. I'm going to be talking very little bit about CVs, but we do have a specific session that's devoted to CVs coming up in a couple of weeks. So if that's something that you are concerned about, definitely come to that session or look at our YouTube channel. We have a playlist again devoted to CVs. But if you just after a template, that's on our website in the CV section. Okay, now a couple of websites that I would suggest. First one, this is a website called Student Job. This is really helpful because it hosts lots of different jobs that are directly applicable to students. So there are part-time jobs on there, but there are also internships, placements, summer jobs, Christmas jobs, graduate jobs eventually. So there's all sorts of jobs available on there. And again, they are kind of what you would call student friendly. They are specific to the student experience. So that should be, I guess, added to what I call your rotation. Every day when you're looking for a job, you want to be doing something slightly different. So one day it might be Indeed, one day it might be Student Job, another day it might be Unitemps, which I'm going to show you in a minute. You don't want to rely on one specific way of looking for jobs because there is no one magic bullet, okay? That's why I refer to it as a rotation. You're rotating what you're doing. This needs to be one of it. Okay, we've got another question. On this website, I've been seeing a list of remote data entry jobs. Are those scams? I don't know. I don't know what you're seeing. What I would suggest is research the company. Is the company legit? Do they have a website? Do they have more than just, is it just job adverts you're seeing when you Google the company name? Or is it something else? Are you actually seeing that they have a web presence? That would suggest they're probably a bit more legit. Okay. So we've had another question. Is Stint a reliable app? Like I said when this was asked originally, I don't know Stint. I've never used it before. That doesn't mean it's not reliable. What I would suggest is look at the jobs that it is suggesting to you and then Google those companies. Do those companies have a web presence, like I just said? Do they actually have, a bit more than just jobs coming up? Do they have a website? Do they have a LinkedIn presence? That would suggest that those jobs are probably not scam jobs, that they're worthwhile, and then maybe Stint is reliable. But like I said, I'm sorry, I've never used Stint or heard of it before. Okay, next thing that you should add to your rotation. This is a website called Unitemps. Unitemps is really useful because it's specifically temporary roles that are student friendly again. They can usually fit in and around your studies, they're part-time. This is a really useful website to add to your rotation to look for jobs that are available. Can be really, really helpful. This is where you will find, again, temporary jobs that are, appropriate for students in that they'll be able to schedule, can't quite think of the word, scheduled shifts or whatever it is around your studies. So again, another thing to add to your rotation. And then, of course, we've got on-campus jobs. Now, everything that we're aware of as the careers service on campus, that goes on to Career Connect. So you all presumably booked or found this session on Career Connect. Similarly, on Career Connect, you can find vacancies, and all of the part-time jobs that we're aware of on campus are there. Now, the different schools might have their own ways of doing things, the different faculties, so I'd suggest speaking to people around your faculty, maybe your tutor, to get a sense of, are there any other places that your faculty or your school advertises these jobs? Like I said, anything that we're aware of goes through Career Connect, particularly things like open day staff, alumni fundraising callers, they're all on Career Connect. So that again should be added to your rotation. But another thing that can be really worthwhile if you aren't aware of it is the Student Union Job Shop. This is any part-time work that the Student Union is aware of. They post all of that on there. And then you can see on the screen, dead simple, really easy to use. And this is where you'll find a lot of jobs available that are student friendly. They might be on campus, they might be around campus, can be really helpful. Now, we've had a few questions. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll just take a brief pause to let anybody type. And then we'll get moving with the next part of the session. Okay, if anyone is typing, please feel free, type away, but I'll just move on to the next slide. So, now I've already mentioned this briefly, but anything that's part-time that we're aware of is put on Career Connect. So yes, that's university campus jobs, but anything else, and we do get quite a lot, goes on to Career Connect. So this really needs to be part of your rotation. We also host all sorts of other sorts of jobs on there, graduate jobs, internships, our own internships, for example, go on there. What you can do is search on there, set up email alerts, obviously share vacancies with friends. This can be really, really helpful. And like I say, everything that we're aware of goes on through there. Now, we have had a question where to apply for on-campus jobs. So I covered that in this section. So anything that we're aware of that's an on-campus job goes on Career Connect. But the other thing I'd say is look at the job shop on Student Union. Okay, one other question. I tried to open the CV pathway in the resources in Career Connect website, but it said permission denied. So in that case, I am going to put our contact details up on the screen. If you do have anything like that, please email our email address. This will go on the screen at the end. Just explain that you're having issues, you're having that permission denied on the CV pathway, and someone will get back to you within the next day and we'll sort it out for you. Okay, now this is what Career Connect looks like, just in case you're not aware of it. And you'll see we have all sorts of on there, events, appointments, opportunities, forms. What I would suggest, have a look on here. Familiarise yourself with it because we've all sorts of things on there. And there is the vacancies tab where you can look at the different roles available. Look at everything that we're aware of, all the things that we've put on there. Everything that we're aware of, whether it's part-time work, on campus, whatever it might be, goes on to Career Connect. So you really need to be checking this on a regular basis. Now, we've had a few questions about things like CVs, applications, and it's already been alluded to in one of the questions, but your part-time work CV needs to be different from your career CV. Employers, they're not going to be that bothered about your degree choice at this point. What they're going to want to know is that you have some specific skills, things you're able to do, a little bit about your motivation, maybe previous work experience, volunteering. Like I said, when the question was asked, we have templates for this on our website, so that will give you a start. But what I would really suggest is you have a look at either our YouTube channel, where we talk about this in some detail, or you go onto the CV pathway. Presumably, of course, you can get access to that. If you can't, email us, we'll help you with that. The CV pathway is a bit of a short course on how to write a strong CV. We go into lots of detail there. You can also upload your CV and get really quick feedback to let you know, are you on the right lines? You can also then unlock an appointment type where you can have an appointment to review your CV in some detail with an advisor. So that can be really, really helpful. But like I said, we've got tons of support for CV, so make use of all of that. And this is the QR code to the actual CV pathway. I'll just give you a second to scan that if you're all interested. Now, we have been having some issues with it. Someone mentioned already in the chat. If you are having trouble accessing the CV pathway, I am going to put our email on screen in a few slides. Just email us, explain what's going on, that you're having your permission denied or the pathway's not working, whatever it might be, and we will resolve that for you. It's proving a bit odd at the moment. We don't really understand why, but we can get it fixed for you on an individual basis. So, sorry, I really don't understand that next question. How to make sure the CV is at approved, ATS approved. Ah, I see. Sorry, I misunderstood that. So as part of the CV pathway, you upload your CV to our AI checker, and it does that part for you. It gives you feedback on how to beat that system, essentially. And then that unlocks the ability to have an appointment with an advisor. So that part of the process gets around or teaches you how to beat the ATS system, and it gives you feedback on improving your CV. It actually gives you a score. The score is only part of it. That's why we always suggest get it looked at by someone else, one of our advisors afterwards, but that's the first part of the process. Okay, now a little bit for international students. So this is part of the process. There's obviously, for anyone who's new to the UK, you are going to need a national insurance number. Now, in terms of getting an national insurance number, it's dead simple. All you have to do is go onto the UK government website. There is an online application form where it walks you through it basically to get a national insurance number. You start your application. It then gives you a temporary national insurance number, which you can use to start applying for jobs while the actual national insurance number comes through. Like I said, dead simple, but get onto the gov.uk website. All you need to do is put National Insurance Number UK into Google. It'll be the first thing that comes up. It takes you through the whole process. Now, as an international student, there are some other rules that you have to abide by, particularly with part-time work. You can only work a maximum of 20 hours a week. That is a hard limit. You cannot work more than that. The university, we don't explicitly require this, but we would advise no more than 15 to make sure that you can balance it with your studies. Anything over 15 tends to become a bit difficult. We're not going to say you absolutely have to do 15 and no more. You can go to 20, but you cannot go over that 20 hours a week. And for more advice, we have lots of resources on our website, and you can see there on UKISA as well. UKISA is the external body for international students. There's lots of advice on there, both about part-time work, but getting a part-time job while you're here, but also things like student visas, the graduate visa, the skilled worker route. So if that's something that you are a little bit concerned about, go on to UKISA in the first instance. And like I say, lots of resources on there. Already mentioned it a little bit, but this is our website. We have lots of resources on there, and you'll see the tabs at the top: which career, jobs, work experience, applications, interviews. This is where you'll find all of our resources. So all of our templates are on there for CVs, whether it's graduate or part-time job. That's where you can download them. We also have lots of advice on applications, making strong interviews, the international student tab details all the support available there, and all of our events. So whether it's the events that I'm running, these sorts of talks, but also employer events where you can actually meet employers, all of that is on there. So when I'm talking about your rotation of activity, the things you need to do to help you find a part-time job, this is going to be on there. It will help a lot. And if you need any advice, whether it is you want an appointment, you're not quite sure where to go, or you just want someone to chat to, the Atrium is where you can find us. This is our careers desk. You do not need an appointment. You can just come up and ask any question you like that's careers related. We're in University Place on the first floor in what's called the Atrium. It's open between 10 and 4 every day. So like I said, don't need an appointment. If you just want someone to talk through whatever you're dealing with, whatever you want to get to, please come and see us. It's a really friendly team, and we're more than happy to help however we can, essentially. Which, everybody, is bringing me more or less to the end, and we're bang on half an hour. So, last couple of things I'm going to ask you to do, and of course, if you do have any questions while I am wrapping up, please do put them in the chat, and I'll get through to them at the end. But this is our attendance QR code. Can I ask anyone who didn't get the chance to at the start to just scan that for me? This makes sure that I can get a sense of, first of all, who's come to this session, but also I can send you the slides and the recording at the end of the week. So I'll just give you a second to do that. And like I said, any questions, just shoot them in the chat and I'll get to them before we finish. Last QR code, I promise, because I know this is like the third. This is our feedback survey. So if you could just scan that for me, I'd be really grateful if you could just take 30 seconds to fill out this form. Gives us a sense of, are we pitching this at the right sort of level? Is it too long? Is it too short? Are there things covered in here that you would prefer covered in some more detail? Or is there anything that's not covered that you'd like to be covered in the session? We are really responsive to feedback. Every year we sort of review all of our sessions and we make sure that they're up to scratch basically. So we'd really appreciate it if you could just take the time to do that. And once you've done that, everybody, you are free to go. I really hope that was helpful. If you do have any questions, obviously put them in the chat, but if you want to email us or come and have a chat, obviously we've got the Atrium desk which is open, and I've just realised that's not there, so I will put our email address in the chat for anyone that is having any issues or just wants to ask a question. So the email address is careers.info@manchester.ac.uk, and you'll see it on the screen in the chat box. So any questions, please feel free, email that and we'll get back to you, like I say, usually within the next working day, definitely within the next 2. Once you've done that, everybody, you are free to go. I really hope that was helpful. Thank you very much for coming. If you've any questions, like I say, put them in the chat or come and have a chat. Thank you very much. I will stop the recording now.